Hi, and welcome to Bariatric Care. I'm Dr. Connie Stapleton, and in the next two episodes, I am going to be doing a book review. What book, you might ask? Oh, the book that I wrote called MindPrep, the book. Let me tell you how this book came to be. Well, MindPrep was initially a set of 10 videos, and for anyone for whom I do a pre-surgical evaluation, I require that they watch the MindPrep videos. This is still in practice today. It's still something I require that everybody who has an evaluation with me does. The reason is because I felt super unethical having 1 hour session with patients and trying to not only get their information, but also share with them a lot of information that I feel is absolutely essential for patients to have prior to having surgery. So that went on for about a good 10, 12, 15. I can't remember how long ago I did the initial mind prep videos, but I also put them on YouTube at that time. And so people were able to watch them. Well, I took those ones down when I had a professional version of MindPrep created. And so now the only people who are able to watch the MindPrep videos are either the people who participate in the full Berry Aftercare program or those people for whom I do evaluations through their program. So I decided that the information in these videos was so important. And I don't know why I didn't think of it a lot sooner because I had the majority of the outline for the book already created in the scripts for the Mind Prep videos. However, I wasn't satisfied with just that information, so I added a tremendous amount of additional information to Mind Prep, the book, and it turned out to be way bigger and way thicker than I anticipated. But I'm going to tell you, this book came after 18 years of working in the bariatric field. And so there's tremendous amounts of information. And it's set up so that the first half of the book is pre op information, the second half is post op information. But don't let that fool you. It is all information that is critically valuable, whether you're thinking about surgery, whether you've already had surgery, whether you're in the preparation stages for surgery, or if you're 12 years past surgery. Also, if you know people who are thinking about having a weight loss procedure through a medical weight loss program or on their own, this information pertains to everybody. I tailored it to people having weight loss surgery because that's the area in which I work. But this information truly is invaluable. So I encourage you to read the book. I'm going to go through the book a little bit and kind of tell you what's in it because I really do value the information in this book, and I think that you will too, again, regardless of where you're at in this journey. So I originally created the videos to help people prepare for the non-medical aspects related to weight loss surgery. Now you may be thinking, what non-medical aspects? That's if you're a pre-op. If you're a post-op, you know exactly what I mean by non-medical issues related to weight loss surgery. There are so many emotional and psychological issues caught up in this whole being overweight, dealing with the disease of obesity, losing weight so very rapidly, the way people change their behavior in interactions with you, the way you change your interactions in terms of how you respond to other people, how the relationship with yourself changes, how the relationship with food changes. It's so much more than most people have any idea of prior to having surgery. So all of that information is in this book. And in the very beginning of the book, I remind people to keep in mind that although it's all this, I want the surgery, I want the surgery, I want the surgery, I want the surgery, and I don't blame you. You want to get that weight off. You absolutely just, if you could walk in the front door of the receptionist's office and out the back door into the operating room, I'm pretty sure many people would go for that without any preparation. But keep this in mind that the surgical procedure, your procedure, takes place on a single day. Your recovery from the disease of obesity, and yes, you know it's a disease. It is a chronic disease. It does not go away. That part of the process lasts forever versus the one day of the event. So the fact that the surgery is like a wedding. I had when I made the MindPrep videos, all 3 of my children were getting married. They all 3 got married within a period of 9 months. So weddings were on our brain. Weddings were on our brain. So I titled the first video, Weight Loss Surgery is Like a Wedding, because I was in the throes of wedding preparation, and it dawned on me that when people are getting ready to get married, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for my wedding. I can't wait to live happily ever after. My prince or princess has finally come, and on we go. Let's get on with the wedding. And it's very much the same for people who are preparing to have weight loss surgery. It's like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity. This is my happily ever after waiting to happen. Let's do this surgery. Well, getting married and thinking about weight loss surgery propose a lot of questions. See the word propose there, right? That was punny. But the idea with an engagement is let's set the stage for the wedding. And getting engaged poses a lot of questions, right? Like, gosh, is this the right time? Where should I ask? Who should ask the question, right? Is the ring just right? Should there be a ring? Should other people be there? But the ultimate question is, will you marry me? Think about a person who's considering weight loss surgery. They think about all the things, what this surgery could mean for them and how they're going to look and how they're going to feel. And oh my gosh, what's going to happen when they lose all this weight? And they think about how fantastic and wonderful life is going to be. They've waited years, maybe a lifetime. And now the opportunity is possible, but they have a lot of questions in light of their search for their happily ever after. And like the marriage proposal questions, some of them are the same, right? Is the timing right? Some of them are different. Do I have insurance coverage for both scenarios? Do I have enough information? How do I know this is going to work? And then the big question for surgery, should I do it or not? And then there comes a decision. I'm going to get engaged. I'm going to have this surgery. And then the questions are mind-boggling. When, where, with whom, who should officiate, who should do the surgery? All of those things. Who should I tell? Who should I not tell? Who should I invite to be in my journey? Who should I not? How much is this going to cost? So there's a lot of similarities, right? And even though people getting married know the statistics that 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I hate to tell you this, there's even more divorce after weight loss surgery. But here's what people think, right? And we need to think this. It's not going to happen to me because I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do this right. So onward and forward. Everybody is on their way to their happily ever after. It's a very exciting period of time. It's an anticipatory period of time. There are a lot of emotions. I'm excited, but I'm scared. I don't really know what to anticipate. I know a lot of people who are married, and I know a lot of them aren't happy. I know a lot of people who have had weight loss surgery, and I know a lot of them have regained their weight, but that is not going to happen to me. I am going to be different. We are going to be different. Our marriage is going to be different. My journey is going to be different. And then we go about making promises, right? And I go through this whole example in the book of having listened to a preacher talk about getting married and what it's like for people to get married. And I was so astounded because what he was saying as he spoke about weddings and marriage is exactly what I say to patients. And I had already been saying it in the process leading to weight loss surgery. So when I talk to a patient and they say, "Ooh, I promise I'm going to, follow the directions. I promise I'm going to exercise. I'm going to promise, I'm going to promise." But promises, whether for a wedding or for surgery, are not a substitute for preparation. So the surgery centers have a lot of preparation for weight loss surgery, as do some churches for weddings. But the truth is, whether you say I do at an altar or you say I do agree to the surgeon and the dietitian and the psychologist and the exercise people, doesn't really mean you're capable or prepared of doing it. I'm going to exercise. Well, are you really capable? I'm going to stay away from carbs forever and ever and ever. Is that really a possibility? So saying I do, what it does is it makes people accountable. So I've told people I'm going to do this. Now I'm accountable for doing it. And if you find out later that you're not able to do it, what does it leave you? It leaves you miserable. So we have to plan. Another word that people throw around with weddings and weight loss surgery is commitment. I commit. I'm going to make a commitment. Well, commitment, as Andy Stanley, the preacher I'm talking about in this series, says, is overrated. What if you commit to something and you can't do? You commit to exercising, but you find out that, I overcommitted. Or you commit to all those vows and you're like, I did say for better or worse, but wow, right? So what if you make a commitment, you find out, I've promised to do this, but I'm not prepared to fulfill this promise. I'm not prepared to follow through with my commitment. Then you feel miserable and your promise has been kind of worthless. So it's all about preparation. And another thing that people don't really like to hear is your past is a better predictor of your behavior than a promise, right? So if your past relationships were all pretty miserable, what makes you think this one's going to be good? If your past uh, episodes of dieting have all ended in regain, that's a kind of a scary thought. No, it's a hugely scary thought, right? So the question becomes, where have you been and where are you going? And if you base a marriage on your past relationships that haven't been so good, or you base the weight loss surgery process on the fact that all other diets have led to regain, it can be very, very terrifying. So, what you can do if you haven't had the surgery yet, or even if you have, is commit to learning what you didn't know before you had it, or commit to learning as much as you can before you have it. So when you see this checklist of all those things you have to do, and it's kind of a pain in your rear, it's like, I don't want to do all these things. Know that it is in your best interest. So it all boils down to this. You've made promises in the past, you've made commitments. Every time you started a diet, you probably made promises and commitments, and you found out that at some point in time you weren't able to follow through with those because probably you weren't adequately prepared, right? Being able to make healthy food choices on an ongoing basis, being able to follow through with that exercise, whether you feel like it or not, my friends, and being able to follow through with healthy lifestyle behaviors is something you've got to prepare to do. Just having surgery or saying, oh, yeah, I'm ready, doesn't make you prepared. So, this book is about teaching you what you need to know and how to actually be prepared to follow through with the commitments, to follow through with the promises, to follow through with the I will, I'm gonna, I do's. So, the other thing to think about is when you're having surgery or getting married, is that a lot of people think all my problems will be gone after I have surgery. Some people think their problems will be solved when they get married. They've got their person, right? Well, here's the reality. And I say this a lot. If you didn't like your mother-in-law before you got married, chances are you're not going to like her after you get married. And the same is true in a lot of aspects of weight loss surgery. If you loved carbs and can't get away from them before surgery, at some point in time, that love of carbs and the desire to return to eating them is going to reappear, right? If you hated exercise before surgery, having surgery is not going to make you an exercise lover. I promise you. So we have a honeymoon and all is well, right? Oh, but after the honeymoon, things get real for both a wedding and bariatric surgery. So we need to do all we can to prepare for a wedding or a surgery. So that's how I begin the book. And when we get down to chapter 2, we're talking about things that are about the preparation and patience. You have to have patience as you go through this preparation period. I know it's frustrating. Your insurance may say 3 months or 6 months of, dietitian, or if you're getting married, you might have to have 3 sessions of couples counseling, which by the way is worthless. However, the information you receive from, I shouldn't say it's worthless. I'm feeling bad about having said that, is something. But the sessions you have with your dietitian are crucial. So pay attention to those. The sessions that you have with a mental health professional are crucial. So I used to give this talk at one of the bariatric centers where I worked, and I would give it to pre-ops who absolutely were bored out of their minds, right? They're like, oh God, another meeting. I got to be here. And I would do this before one of their dietitian meetings. So they'd really be looking at me like, what are you doing here? Well, I gave them a talk called Things You Need to Know. And as I said, and what I say to them, I put up a big slide that says, I just want to get this weight off. And I get that. And I want that for you too. We all want you to have the surgery so you can get this weight off. And that's what surgery does. It helps you get that stubborn weight off that you've been fighting forever and ever and ever and ever. So really, it's like, do I have to go through all this preparation? I just want to get this weight off. Well, here's the deal. Myself and all the other people who are in that pre-op process with you, we do want you to get the weight off, but we want something more important. You're thinking, what the heck could be more important than that? We want you to keep that weight off. And I know you want that too. But for the majority of people heading into surgery, they just want the weight off. Nothing else is on their mind. I just want this weight off. So what I put on the screen next is a sign that says dream big, set goals, take action. Yes, dream big. Dream about all the things you want to do. It's going to be amazing and wonderful, and we want you to do those things. Set goals. Absolutely. Set goals with the dietitian, set goals with your family, set goals with yourself, the psychologist, whoever you're working with. But take action. This is where people get hung up. They're going to try. No, 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 no. Trying is dying, my friends. You're either doing something or not. Are you exercising? Oh, I'm trying. What the heck does that mean? You're either exercising or you're not. Have you cut back on your carbs? Well, I'm trying. Have you cut back on your carbs? Yes or no? Right? So you're either doing something or you're not. And this action piece, foreshadowing, that's the key to your long-term success. All right. So the book is about preparation. It's about what you actually have to do, not what you need to think about doing. Then in that same talk, I talk about some myths, right? Some myths. I'll never be hungry. I'll never regain my weight. I won't get the dumping, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm afraid to eat anything because I will get the dumping. So I straighten that out, right? 40%, 40 to 50% of people experience dumping. So if you're counting on that to be something that keeps you from sugar, it only happens for 40 to 50%. And I address a lot of the myths. And then we talk about what I refer to as aims. If you're preparing, you've got to have, what are you aiming for? You've got to have accountability. So what are you doing for accountability? I talk about ways to have accountability. And if you can do this before you have surgery, all the better. If you've already had surgery, we'll start doing these things now. You've got to have accountability. It's one of the number one ways that research says you will get weight off and keep it off. You have to immerse yourself in this. It's not just, oh, I'm going to have the surgery and all is going to be well. You better be listening to podcasts. You better be reading all you can about the surgery itself. You better be in those support groups learning about what the reality is from people who've already had the surgery. You better be immersing yourself, not just in the food aspects of this, but in the how do I live a healthy lifestyle before and after, because it's the lifestyle changes, my friends, that's going to keep this weight off of you. AIMS is the word here. M stands for mentors. People who have had the surgery, not 6 months out, not a year out. People who are 3, 4, 5, 10, 12, 18 years out of surgery and are keeping the majority of their weight off. Those are the people who know what they're doing and are doing it. They're not trying, they are doing. People tell me all the time, my aunt had surgery 6 months ago and she's doing great. Well, I should hope so. Because that first year, year and a half to 2 years, the surgery does the work. Yeah, you're in the process, hopefully, of changing those lifestyles so that you can maintain the weight loss, but you need to find mentors who are far, far down the road. And then you have to start thinking about, what do I need to change about myself? The S stands for self, because believe it or not, there are going to be a lot of changes within yourself. So then I go on in chapter 3 and we begin a discussion about, let me see what the title of this chapter is. Hang on here. Understanding your obesity. So this chapter is in there because there are a lot of complicated issues that result in a person having the disease of obesity. And there are many of those things that a person has no control or influence over, such as genetics, such as um, how you grew up, such as what you were fed when you grew up, such as what were your cultural habits that you grew up in. You can't change those things. You had no influence over those things. The thing that leads to regain for most people are old habits. The old habits return. And what am I talking about when I say that? Eating a lot of fast food, engaging in emotional eating, which, by the way, surgery doesn't teach you anything about. You have to seek that out. Maybe you're a nighttime eater. Surgery may or may not help with that. Buying unhealthy foods. Surgery doesn't take charge of what you buy. Eating a lot of processed carbs, eating a lot of sweets, eating a lot of starchy foods, not exercising, not meal prepping, not journaling your food, drinking a bunch of calories that may be unhealthy, eating large portion sizes. So these old habits are what lead to regain, and they're part of what led to your ultimate highest weight. They're not all of it, obviously, because the disease of obesity, as I said, is very complicated. So in this chapter, we talk about all the issues related to obesity, including genetics, metabolic rate, culture, environment, illnesses, medications, sleep or lack thereof, personal behaviors, and psychological aspects, because all of these things are part of what go into your disease of obesity. And we look at these things one at a time. And the purpose of this is to look at, what of these things can I control or have influence over, and what things can I not? And when it boils down to it, the number one thing you have control over of all of those aspects related to the chronic disease of obesity are your personal behaviors. None of those other things are 100% within your control, but your choices are. And that's the last thing we think about, or we want to think about, maybe. Maybe it's the last thing, because I don't want to have any responsibility for this. And there's a lot of people, professionals, patients, whomever, saying obesity is not your fault. Obesity is not your fault. Well, I agree. The majority of issues related to the culmination of your obesity are not your fault, but there are some that are completely within your control, and therefore are your responsibility to make sure you get a handle on. Because guess what? Putting food in your mouth, my friends, is a voluntary behavior. It's an essential behavior, so we can't really get rid of it. But what you put in there, whether it's a fast food burger and fries, or whether it's some lean protein and some vegetables, that is 100% on you. So if we focus on these things that are your responsibility and that you can change, you are much more likely to have long-term success. So it's not a fun thing to look at, because we don't want to look at, right? We don't want to look at, what's my part? But if you really want to be long-term success so that you keep that weight off, you got to do a couple of things. And one is admit to the things you've been doing that you are responsible for that added to your weight. So you got to fess up. Do I eat out at fast food a lot? Do I eat a lot of stuff from a vending machine? Do I get a lot of my meals from a convenience store? What are you doing? Am I skipping meals and just eating one huge meal at the end of the day that comes from fast food? You got to own up to what you are doing. And then you got to say, what can I do about it? And if you're like, I don't know, I eat in response to stress. Well, I don't know. Well, that's your responsibility to find out. So that's what this chapter is about, recognizing that there are so many aspects of your disease that you can't control or influence, but there are some you can. And really being willing to look at this area of personal personal choices is important, because there's a lot related to regain that you are responsible for and that you can learn to change, right? So it's wise to focus on those things that you can change instead of saying, gee, golly, there's nothing I can do because, it's genetic. Well, yes, it is. And so part of where you land is going to be related to your genetics. But a lot of this, the personal behaviors, you can absolutely influence. And effort, not trying, effort is required to keep this weight off. And you may need to learn some skills. So taking responsibility to learn the skills that you need is also critical when it comes to getting this weight off and keeping this weight off. The fourth chapter is called Your Relationship with Food. You're like, my what? My relationship with food? Well, hopefully you're aware that you have a relationship with food. And some people have a healthy relationship with food. They eat when they're hungry. They listen to their body. They don't overdo unhealthy foods, heavily sugar-laden foods, or, have a diet that's mostly processed foods. That's not a healthy relationship. But so some people do have a healthy relationship with food. Others do not have a healthy relationship with food. And so your relationship with food is something you really need to explore. Because if it's unhealthy, you can begin to change that relationship, especially if it's before surgery. But if you've already had your surgery and you're recognizing, you know what, my relationship with food isn't really that healthy. I count on it to be my best friend, when human interaction would be a better friend than food. Maybe you struggle to make friends, and so that's something you need to work with a therapist or a coach or your family members. So you need to identify, what is your relationship like with food? And it might, you might have some questions. So I'm going to give you some examples right here of things that may represent an unhealthy relationship with food. So if you hear yourself in this list, and it's not complete, but these are some examples of what an unhealthy relationship with food might look like. If you're a yo-yo dieter, you've gained and lost and gained and lost and gained and lost. It's not a real healthy relationship with food because it's very, very inconsistent. If you let the scale determine your emotions, the quality of your self-talk, and how you behave toward others. So you get on the scale, you're beating yourself up, you're calling yourself names, you really take a downward emotional cycle, and then you meet other people, your kids or your spouse or your coworkers or your whomever, and you're crabby and depressed and unhappy, right? That is not an unhealthy relationship with food or the scale, because you're letting your weight dictate how you feel about yourself, and that flows out to your relationship with the not healthy. If you have super rigid rules about food, all or nothing, I eat no carbs or I eat all the carbs, I exercise never or all the time. It's a big problem in this community that I've worked with people all the time. So rigid rules, whether it's in a relationship with food or people, BT dub, is not a good thing. And if you have rigid rules and then you fall off and don't follow your rules and you start beating yourself up, now you're damaging your relationship with yourself, which I guarantee you in turn is going to damage relationships with others. Because when we're beating up on ourselves, we're not our best selves when we're with our others. If you view food and dieting in that all or nothing, or you're a perfectionist, you're all in, you're all out, I'm good, I'm bad, food is good, food is bad, not healthy, right? Food is food. You choose to put healthy food in your body, or you choose to put unhealthy food in your body. So it's more about your relationship with yourself. I hate to tell you, but that's common, right? Your relationship with yourself is in large part going to determine what kinds of foods you put in your body for the most part. Everybody puts some junk food in their mouth most of the time, at least most people, maybe not everybody. But most of us, we eat our healthy foods and then now and then we have the crap food. Not a problem. But if you don't feel good about yourself on the inside, you probably don't treat yourself the way you talk to yourself, the food you put in yourself. In some ways, you are engaging in behaviors that are unhealthy for yourself. It's absolutely connected. I know you don't like to hear that. I didn't like to hear that, but it's a reality. But it can be fixed. You can improve your relationship with yourself and you can improve your relationship with food, which is what this book is all about. If you think about food so much of the time during the day, probably not a healthy relationship with food. If thoughts about food distract you from conversations or following through with your work or following through with responsibilities at home, not healthy. If you exercise to earn food, you've all seen the memes, I run 12 miles so I can eat this. That may or may not be a healthy relationship, but probably harkens to the less healthy aspect of the relationship with food. If you hide food, sneak food, or eat in secret, not healthy relationship with food. Or if you feel the need to work off food immediately after you've eaten. I've eaten, I need to go get on my treadmill. That's often a thought for me, but I don't often follow through with that. I exercise on a regular basis, but I don't follow through with that immediate thought, right? So there's some unhealthy thinking in my relationship with food after many, many years of working on this. But overall, it's become a much, much healthier relationship with food. You worry about food and eating in social situations, unhealthy. You spend hours engaged in non-eating food activities. Ding, 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 friends. Watching TV shows about food, combing the aisles of the grocery store, reviewing recipes. Yes, you need to do this to get healthy recipes and to eat healthy. I'm talking about hours and hours of time engaged in this because this is just thought about food. It's kind of like talking to a new love interest online or on the phone for hours and hours and hours, right? Ooh, it's so wonderful and wonderful, makes me feel good. But after a while, that's not how real life works, right? You maintain connection with your persons to have a healthy relationship, but it's not that, oh, I got to have it all the time. All right. If you don't trust yourself around food, if you believe you'll only be happy when you can wear a certain size or have a specific weight, if you feel guilty about eating, if you binge eat, if you label food as good or bad, if you ignore or deny your body's natural hunger cues, if you spend a great deal of money on fad diets and gimmicky weight loss products, yeah, not healthy. Healthy relationship with food looks more like you can deal with stress without turning to food to cope. You give yourself permission at times to eat those foods you especially enjoy that may not fall in the health food category. You listen to and respect your body's natural hunger cues. You enjoy eating, but you stop when you've had enough. You feel satisfied after eating, not guilty, not regretful. Your eating requires some forethought and planning, but food doesn't preoccupy the thoughts. You feel present when you're eating. It doesn't numb you out and help you avoid life. It doesn't end in feelings of shame or guilt. You're comfortable eating in front of others. You don't punish yourself for going overboard once in a while. You understand that food is pleasurable, but it's one of many pleasurable aspects of life. You realize you're not defined by the food you eat or the weight or the size of your clothing. It doesn't define you as a person. All right, so those are some examples of a healthier relationship with food. So that's very, very spelled out in this chapter of the book. And it's a good one because a lot of people don't really recognize the kind of relationship they have with food, and they don't think that it's an important aspect of this recovery process. And when I say recovery process, I mean it in the sense of recovering from a chronic disease. You're never going to be healed or recovered. It's a chronic disease. You're going to always have to work on this for the rest of your life. And then in the next chapter, we talk about, those so familiar, gotta do ems, right? Actually, that's probably not this chapter. I think I skipped a chapter. We talk about the emotional and mental health issues and weight loss. And this is important because some people fear having a pre-surgical evaluation because they have a mental health diagnosis or they take psychotropic medications and they're fearful to tell me or whoever's doing their evaluation because they think it's going to prevent them from having surgery. That's not at all true. So if you haven't had surgery yet, rest assured that that is not going to prevent you from having surgery. If you have already had surgery and you're struggling with, mental health issues, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, make sure you get treatment for those because they can be interrelated with emotional eating, binge eating, those kinds of things. So we want to pay attention to the mental health aspects. And here's something that is a reality. Um, there's a lot of influences um, in your life that can result in mental health problems, right? It could be a biological thing. A lot of mental health diagnoses are definitely brain diseases. There's brain chemicals, there's brain pathways, and they're involved in a lot of mental health issues. There's also some learned behaviors. Maybe you had a parent who was, a hypochondriac. Not that that's a mental health disease, but it's not a really good way of functioning in the world, but you learned that. So maybe you learned that behavior. A lot of mental health problems, including depression, including anxiety, can stem from earlier life traumas. It could be a major trauma or it could be a minor trauma. And there are a lot of things that people don't recognize as being traumatic. So I think we would all say that being beaten within an inch of your life is a childhood trauma or an adult trauma if it happens as an adult. Or if you're a child and you've experienced sexual abuse, that's clearly a trauma to a child. But there are other things that people don't recognize as being traumatic, such as constantly your weight being mentioned in everything you do. I have these retreats for bariatric patients, and so many people tell me that they've been told you'll never find anybody to love you, or if you were prettier or thinner, or if your weight was different, you would be able to get a good job, or you would be able to find a partner, or you would be able to compete with your sister, or it's these constant comments about your weight, your size, and what that will prevent you from enjoying in life is traumatic for a child. Being put on diet after diet after diet after diet is a trauma for a child. Doesn't mean your parent wasn't, doing the best that they thought they could. I don't know if it's the best they could, but they thought they were trying to help. But really it was more harm. It did more harm than good. So, a pill can help treat biological imbalances, but the underlying factors like, you know, constant criticism or, never feeling like you were included or being ostracized at school, those things are not going to be handled by a pill. But here's the deal. So we tell people, here, I can give you a pill. And they're like, oh, yeah, give me a pill. But if you say you need to talk to a therapist and deal with these things, it's like, oh, heck no, 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 and no, thank you. And that's part of the reality for many people in the weight loss journey. You can take a pill and it might help with your weight or your hunger, but if not everybody has these, but if you have underlying unresolved issues that are affecting your mental health, a pill isn't going to resolve that. You may take a pill to help with depression or to help with anxiety, but it is still there. And until you confront it, it's not going away. So you might want to think about if you're struggling with any anxiety or depression or any other kinds of mental health struggles, that you need to think about working with a coach or a therapist because your overall self-esteem and your belief that you can accomplish something can be and most likely has been affected if you had a constant stream of negative kinds of things happening in your childhood. Now, is that everybody? Absolutely not. Is it over half of the people with whom I've worked in 20 years? It is. And people don't like to know about that or hear about it. So I go through this whole thing of talking about the kinds of things that you might not think of as having affected you. So I would really encourage you to take a good, strong look at this chapter and talk with your friends and your family members. And if you're in therapy, talk to your therapist about it, because these things are kinds of things that lead to the old habits, and the old habits are what result in regain. So, this is a chapter you absolutely don't want to miss, regardless of where you're at in your journey. I love this chapter so much. It's kind of long, but it's absolutely worth the read. And I have a lot of patients that in their evaluation, I tell them, yes, I want you to have surgery. You absolutely need to have this surgery for your health, for your longevity, to save your life. But my concern is, because you have shared with me this, and this is not to tell you don't share it with people, because you need to. I'm concerned that you're an emotional eater, and if you don't learn some healthier skills for this emotional eating related to your relationship with your mother, or the stress at your job, or the problems in your marriage, or the fact that your parent abandoned you and you were young, if you don't deal with those things and learn healthy coping skills, then this emotional eating will lead you right back to regain. So you need to learn some skills to deal with emotional eating, or you need to learn some skills to deal with this addiction you might have to food. So, this is a really important chapter, and it's not one that people are really eager to get into, but it is critical that you know this information. So, that is the first half of the book. And again, even though the videos are geared toward pre-op, it doesn't matter where you are in this journey. You can always benefit from reading this. So I would encourage you to pick up the book, Mind Prep. The book is on Amazon. You can get it on my website, which is ConnieStapletonPhD.com. And I would encourage you to become an active member of the Aftercare program, which is going to be changed to bariatric care, because it's for pre and post-op living. Got to work on this stuff throughout the journey, and we want you to have long-term success. So check that out at www.bariaftercare, B-A-R-I, aftercare.com. And I look forward to completing the summary of Mind Prep, the book, in our next episode. So please join me and share this with your friends. I'd appreciate it so much. Talk to you next